Thanks for joining us again today on Meadows, and welcome back to my kitchen. Hey, today I am doing quick pickles, and I would like to share my method with you. My method is a 1 quart at a time method that is so perfect when your crops are just starting to come in from the garden. Let's say early spring, and you only have a little handful of asparagus and you don't really have enough to can or freeze or maybe even make supper with it. You can pickle that asparagus 1 quart at a time. Or when the green beans just start coming on and you just have a few of those, it's not enough to really pressure can, but you can pickle them and make dilly beans, and it's 1 quart at a time. So easy, takes care of those few vegetables that are coming on. Same thing with cucumbers when they're just starting to produce and you only have a few of them. I want to share my 1 quart method with you. It's super simple. So if you're interested in finding out how, stick around and I'll show you. Again, and welcome back to my kitchen. Say it's that time of year when our garden produce is starting to get ripe, but it's coming on really slowly. So I have just about enough green beans, I don't know, maybe a quart's worth of green beans. It's not enough to can in the pressure canner, and so what I'm going to do with these few beans is make dilly beans or pickled beans. And I want to share my pickle recipe with you today. I use this a lot of times at the beginning of the season, like when I just have a few cucumbers. I use this recipe for a few cucumbers. Or early in the spring when the asparagus just starts to grow and you just have enough for maybe a pint, I'll pickle asparagus with this same recipe. So this recipe is very versatile. I use it for cucumbers, asparagus, and green beans. And it's so simple, and I just want to show you how it's done. And all you have to remember through this whole recipe is 1, okay? 1 is the magic number. So we're going to take 1 cup of white vinegar. I do use 5%. I know that there's 7% pickling vinegar out there, but I use 5% vinegar. So 1 cup of vinegar, 1 cup of water, and then we are going to take 1 tablespoon of sugar. And it calls for 1 tablespoon of salt. Now if you have canning salt or kosher salt, go ahead and put 1 tablespoon of salt in. But I use, just pretty much universally, I use the fine ground pink Himalayan. And since it is fine ground, a lot more granulars can fit into a measuring spoon than say your canning salt or your kosher salt. So I'm just going to use half of that, just simply because, like I said, a lot more salt can fit into my tablespoon. So what you would use with your canning salt or your kosher salt is 1 tablespoon. I'm going to scant that because I'm using the pink Himalayan fine. So 1 tablespoon salt. And that is literally your brine. Just vinegar, water, salt, and sugar. And this is not hot at all. This is just room temperature vinegar, out of the tap water, and then your salt and your sugar. And so I just stir that to dissolve it, is all I do. We're not going to heat this, but this is kind of like a form of what they call open kettle canning, where usually in open kettle canning, you heat the brine and you pour the hot brine over your vegetables in your canning jar. But this one, since you're only making usually 1 pint or 1 quart at a time, I don't even heat my brine. I heat the whole jar up after I've got it packed in a pan of water, and I'll show you that in a minute. But anyway, so I've got a quart jar today. And for any of these things, whether it is the cucumbers, whether it's the green beans, whether it's the asparagus, I use the same elements in my jar, okay? So what I do is I have fresh dill. I put 1 or 2 heads of fresh dill into a jar, okay? And then I generally add, if I have fresh garlic, I like to add 1 or 2 whole cloves of garlic. But I don't have fresh garlic on hand today. So I've got this minced stuff. I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of minced garlic. And then I add 1 bay leaf, okay? And I just tuck that in there. Now here's where the magic starts. Now I've got some green beans, and I also have some purple whole beans. And the purple whole beans, once they're heated, they will turn green. But you can eat the purple whole beans just like a green bean when they're young and tender. And so, like I said, you know, things are just starting to come on in the garden, and I don't have large quantities yet. And so I'm just going to take the few green beans that I have and pickle them up quick today. So all you're going to do is, after you've got your dill and your bay leaf and your garlic in that jar, I did take and I snapped off my tops and my ends of the green beans, and I washed them also. But these are just fresh out of the garden. So you just start packing those into your jar. Let's see if we can't fit them all in. There is no real science to this, just fit them all in there. It's getting kind of full, so I'm going to have to slow down my handfuls a little bit and just do a few beans at a time. But I think we're going to fit them all in there, no problem at all. That was a little bendy one, wasn't it? Slide them all down in there, kind of squish them down with your fingers if you need to so you can fit more in. Get that jar packed nice and tight with your fresh green beans. And like I said, I just love this for like the beginning of the season when you just have a few things and the garden really isn't producing, you know, like crazy yet, and you just have a few things that are coming ripe. This recipe is just perfect, and it makes just 1 quart at a time. And that's what I love about it, because then you're not really wasting those vegetables. I mean, I could cook these green beans up for supper, I suppose, and we could have fresh green beans, but I just don't feel like doing that today. It's hot, and I'm just going to pickle them. So, okay, I think I have almost as many beans as I can fit into that jar. And so we have, again, we'll recap, we have our dill, we have our garlic, we have a whole bay leaf in there, and then we have our green beans packed fairly tight as you can get them. If you can get them in there tighter than what I have done, go ahead. All that's going to mean is it means that you're going to need less brine to fill up your jars. So the more full you can get it, the better. Okay, so then we take that brine that we mixed with the vinegar, water, sugar, and salt, and we just stirred it so that it was dissolved, and I just pour that in over the beans. Now, I didn't pack that jar as full as what I probably should have, and that's no problem. See, my brine is here. We need to bring that all the way up to the shoulders of the jar and cover all those beans up. That's no problem. You have enough vinegar in there with that 1 cup of vinegar and 1 cup of water. You can just go ahead and finish topping off your jar with plain water. And you're still going to have enough acidity that you won't have any problems. Now today I'm using one of my old-fashioned lids, okay? You guys are probably going to use tin flats, and that's fine. But I have my old glass ones that I like to use. And so I heated my lid. Now with the new tin flats, you don't need to heat them. Sometimes my zinc bands don't like to go on there. But I'll get my lid on there. And then I have, obviously, not my water bath canner. I just have a regular pot of water today. And since I don't have a rack that fits in the bottom of that pan, I'm just going to take a washcloth. And this is a nice heavy cotton washcloth that I crocheted, but just use any clean washcloth. I'm going to set that in the bottom of the pan, just like you would do for your rack. And what that's going to do is that's going to protect your jar from the direct heat of the flame below, or your electric heating element or whatever. Now you're going to take this cold pan of water, cold jar of beans, and stick it in the pan. I'm going to add just a little bit more water to that. You want to make sure that your jar is submerged about halfway. So make sure that you use a big enough pot that your jar is submerged halfway. Now all we're going to do is turn on our heat, and hopefully there it goes. But I got something funky going on with my burner there. Oh, I bet you it's the fan. I'll turn that off in a minute. But anyway, we're going to bring this up to a boil, just simply to a boil. Once it reaches a boil, I'm going to shut the heat off, and then I'm going to let it sit in that hot water for 20 minutes. And it's completely done. You remove it from the pan and it should seal on its own. This is just an amazing recipe. It's so simple. Remember those ones. 1 cup vinegar, 1 cup water, 1 tablespoon sugar, 1 tablespoon salt, 1 or 2 cloves of garlic, 1 bay leaf, and 1 or 2 sprigs of dill. That's all there is to it. Heat it to a boil. Shut it off and let it stand for 20 minutes. You have the best pickles ever. Green beans, cucumbers, asparagus, works for all of them. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed that short little how-to, how I do quick pickles, and I hope you try it in your own kitchens. Thanks for joining me today, and happy canning, everybody. So after I filmed doing the pickles, I realized that I didn't wipe the rim of my jar before I placed my lid. So when I was off cam, I then uncapped my beans before I started boiling them, and I wiped the rim and I reheated my lid and put that on there. Always make sure when you're canning, whether it's pressure cooking, water bathing, open kettle, anything, make sure the rim of that jar is clean. I might have gotten a little bit of salt or a dill weed seed or something on there. So you just always want to make sure that you wipe that with a clean cloth. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that y'all knew that. And then I want you to take a look at the pan. So you can see that now I have the water boiling in the pan. I have heated it up to a boil. All I'm going to do, and you can tell that there's obviously a little residual soap from washing the dish rag in there, which made me really giggle. But anyway, you just bring this to a boil, turn off the heat, and I'm going to allow this jar to sit in the pan for 20 minutes before I remove it. And then I'll just allow it to cool on the counter. I'll either place it on my thick wooden cutting board here, or I'll put it onto a towel. This is how I cool a lot of my canned goods. I've got a cutting board underneath here, and then I cover it with a clean towel, and I place my canned goods as they're cooling on that. So after it sits for 20 minutes, I'm just going to take it out of the water and allow it to cool, and it will seal on its own as it cools down. So again, like I said, super, super simple, easy recipe for quick pickles, and it's just amazing for those small bunches of veggies that you have. So I hope you give it a try. Thanks again for joining us today. God bless.